Welcome to the Look Good, Move Well podcast.
Dude, cottage cheese is not something that you can eat and be attractive at the same time. I'm convinced of this.
Cottage cheese?
Yeah.
But in what form? Because now there's cottage cheese in everything.
I'm talking the pure form.
Just the pure
It's
form.
a texture that doesn't appeal to a lot of people. It gets all over your face. I feel like I have it all over my face right now.
No, you don't. You just have a little bit of the hint of the berries that you were consuming.
Okay, I'll try to.
It's not there. It's just like you get that slightly darker tint to your,
You sure
lips.
it's not my lip gloss?
Could be your lip gloss.
Okay.
It's a little. Are you wearing bluish lip gloss? No, purple.
No.
Purple.
Do I need to do a camera check?
No, you're good. You're good. You're good.
Good.
Could just be the light reflecting off of your glistening lip gloss.
Most of the cameras are going to be on you anyway, so I'm not going to worry about it.
Yeah. I used to. Speaking of cottage cheese, in college I had this like concoction that I would make when I was like in the hardcore meal plan. It was like one of my meals on my meal plan, and it was like cottage cheese. It was like 1 part cottage cheese, 1 part yogurt, 1 part, or not 1 part, but like protein powder, and then flax seeds and maybe one other thing. It's like all mixed together. It was just kind of this like soupy, like chunky, soupy
That sounds
thing.
disgusting.
It actually tasted pretty good. I mean, it all came down to the fact that the protein powder was like delicious, but my now best friend, one of my now best friends, Ben, we were in the same MCAT prep course at the time. So we would go to these it was like a summer long thing, prep for the MCAT, like, I don't know, 3 hours, 4 hours of class a day. And so I was like always busting out little meals and stuff. And I swear, every time he saw me eating that, he'd be like, "What the hell are you eating? What is that?" I was like, "Oh, it's like protein 3 different ways, with some flax seeds and, whatever." And then we eventually became like, we started to like see enough of each other that we're like, okay, we're kind of friendly. It's like, hey, you want to do like a study group? And then we started doing like a study group, and we'd meet at like the cafe in the evening, and like he would bust out his food, which I kid you not, he pulled out like a bag, like a Ziploc bag, and pulled out like 2 hot dogs, like with no bun, just the hot dog, and then would like eat something else. And I was just like, and of course I'm eating like these, prepped out, protein rich things, and he's like, "What the hell's going on here?" I'm like, "What are you eating? You're eating hot dogs out of a bag? What's the deal?" Yeah. Fast forward to now, I will say that was in the year 2006? No, 2005. So 20 years later. Where's Ben now? Measuring his macros, hitting the gym hard. He's in. He's bought in.
Does he still eat hot dogs?
Probably not.
Okay.
I'll bet you he's making some cottage cheese yogurt mixture out there.
Probably. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, it only took me 20 years to influence him, but we succeeded.
got there.
We got there.
We got there in the end. That's all that matters.
That's kind of wild. Like, he and I met 20 years ago. I don't even think we acknowledge that we have a 20-year friendship going on here.
Yeah. I met Alia when I was 16.
Wow. So, yeah, 20 years. Good.
Sure.
Sure. All right. Well, 2 words that are going to define the topic for today. Probably you're going to be like, do they go in the same sentence?
Are they even paired?
When I say sustainable, what do you think? Intensity, of course.
Of course.
Sustainable intensity. What does that mean? Oh, when you fired off your list of things that we could, our topics for today.
Yeah.
I heard this one and I was just like, I'm locked in. I'm ready to go.
You got excited.
Oh my God.
Love it.
I will just, you better be ready for me. Got
I'm
some
ready.
heat. Some heat I'm bringing.
Nice. Love it.
But it's always good to get some context, like why did you even bring this up? You're always, Satya is informed by actual customer data. I'm more just a feel kind of guy.
Yeah.
Data is always better than feeling, so we got to lean heavily into where Satya is coming from on this.
Yeah, well, I have been trying to make sure that our content speaks to our ideal customers. And so I've been using AI to analyze a lot of the conversations that some of our clients have had, mostly when they're sort of like laying out their goals to us and like expressing what their needs are and what their obstacles are. It's all anonymized, of course, but you tend to pick up patterns and themes from this. And one of the themes that I hear a lot of is that, oh, well, what worked for me in the past was that I used to do something that was like quite intense, but not sustainable. And I really think a lot about how we communicate about intensity as we create content, because there is a world of fitness where people totally neglect intensity. And just because we're against the mentality of killing yourself in the gym 5 to 7 days a week, doing super high, I don't know what to call it, I guess high intensity fitness in a certain category, that doesn't mean that intensity doesn't have a very like strong and important place in training. And I think that it's worth coming back to really illuminate the point of, yeah, you have to train super intensely when you're in the gym. You just have to do it in a way where you might not think of as what people tend to call up to mind when they think high intensity fitness.
Totally.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's great. And it's something that I've had probably a dozen, maybe more, maybe like 20 experiences that were in my life of training where I really pushed that boundary so hard on intensity that I had a pretty significant obstacle or pain that I ran into, which made me have to rethink what I was doing.
Yeah.
So like just in life, when you want to like learn from people, what do you want to learn? You want to learn from what people have done that has been successful, but more often than not, you're learning from other people's mistakes. You're just, what mistakes did you make? And then let me make sure I learn those so that I don't make the same mistakes and I can have more of the good stuff and less of the bad stuff. Should you try and avoid every mistake in your life? That's ridiculous. That's silly. And honestly, you won't learn. You won't learn nearly as much, and you won't experience as much in your life unless you go to the dark side from time to time and then come back to the light, and it'll make you appreciate the light more. And it'll also really reinforce, it's like you could be told, hey, don't touch the hot stove. Don't touch the hot stove 100 times. And then the one time you actually touch the hot stove, you're like, oh, I'm not going to touch that again. So I would like to have my kids avoid pain, like from, blunt traumas. But it's like they need to feel like, oh, I just tried to jump and I landed and that really sucked. And I'm not going to do that again. And so with intensity, before we even get into talking about like the possible downsides of intensity, because that's what this is like, that's where this conversation starts. I tried something and then it broke me, or it didn't work, or became too much. And so I don't want to do it like that again. It can make people afraid of intensity. It can make people label intensity as this thing that's bad. But right up until the point where you got hurt, or right up until the point where it was too much, intensity was the ingredient that actually gave you all the results that you wanted. And so for me, it was like 7 years of an intense sport that I saw all of this growth. And then in the final 6 months, it was clear like, hey, this isn't going to work for me anymore. So was intensity bad? No, it was actually 7 years of great and 6 months of too much. And what changed? Not the intensity, my lifestyle around the intensity to be able to tolerate it.
Yeah.
This is what I end up having to explain in some form to every single person that comes looking for, a solution. It's like, well, this worked great for a long time, but now it's not working. So what parts of it worked great And then where did it fall apart? And let's try and kind of reverse engineer more of the good stuff, less of the bad stuff. And when it comes to training, I've had to like use different language over the past 10 years of functional bodybuilding, or 9 years of functional bodybuilding, to articulate this. At periods of time, it was like, hey, stop doing so much, do less. Or, you know, stop burning yourself out, let's build yourself up. Like, let's, you know, stop doing so many like timed Metcons and let's do more interval stuff. Let's, you know, don't go for 1 rep maxes, go for, you know, stick to 70-80% effort. You know, don't lift without tempo, lift with tempo, because that will modulate intensity a little bit. They're all ways of communicating the same fundamental principle, which is you, Satya, at this, you know, ripe young age of 23, in your prime of life, you can handle a certain amount of stress. If you go too much stress, you start to feel overwhelmed, anxious, your back starts to hurt, you start to neglect your self-care, you are not as productive and focused in the projects and work that you want to do. Like, these are things I've observed in you.
Yeah.
When the stress level's the right amount, you are capable of doing all those things really well. And since I've never seen it, I just have to guess, when the stress is not high for you and it's very low, what do you like to do? You like to fill it with things that add more stress and intensity into your life, because you're like, I've got more capacity, I'm going to do more. That's where most people are at. It's like they just try and fill their capacity until they find their limit, and then they, you know, hopefully don't spill over into overreaching or overstressing. And I'm using the word stress because training is a stressor. The more intense your training is, and then the more amount or volume of training you do that is intense, that is just adding to your stress buckets. You know, we have stress buckets. Call it like physical stress, mental stress, emotional stress, environmental stress, nutrition stress.
Yeah.
Right? So you want to pile a bunch of hard training at 25 years old when you're competing for the CrossFit Games, and you're maxing out the stress, the physical stress bucket. Well, it's okay, because I didn't have financial stresses back then. I didn't have, you know, too many work stresses at the time. My mental stress was minimal. I didn't have relationship stress, really. I wasn't married. I didn't have kids. Like, it was just like eat, sleep, train, do some work, like, you know, but I was over indexing on physical stress. And so I could handle a lot of intensity because I could push the envelope there and recover, push the envelope there and recover. And this is kind of the path that a lot of people go through when they go from their 20s to their 30s and then their 30s to their 40s, is that there's a pretty consistent window for many people in their 30s and 40s where their stress profile across the other buckets goes up a lot. More mental, relationship, environmental, emotional stresses are just climbing. And they start to feel like their bodies are breaking down. Well, that's because all these stress buckets, they all are connected, and they all empty into the same basin, which is just your stress bucket, your global stress bucket. Okay, so I'm in my 30s, and it's just like I can't handle the same level of intensity anymore. So intensity must be bad. It's like, well, intensity is not bad. It's just you did too much of it. And really, if you remove intensity altogether, then you're going to also run into a problem of not seeing physical progress either. It's like, okay, well then just, you know, go into the gym and just kind of go through the motions.
Yeah.
Cool. You lowered your stress. You're not feeling beat up, but you're also like, why am I not losing weight? Why am I not getting stronger? It's like, well, because you got to have some intensity in what you're doing. So the concept of sustainable intensity is just evaluating at any given part of your life, how much physical training intensity can you tolerate and still see positive outcomes in your fitness journey. And let's say we just put it on a scale of 0 to 10. 0 being like you don't do anything physically intense, and 10 being the hardest imaginable physical, thing you could do at a very high quantity volume. All right, well, at 41 years old, like I can handle about a 6. At 41 years old, with the amount of energy I want to put towards these other buckets of my life, 6 is about as hard as I can go on physical intensity. Every time I try and go up to a 7 or an 8, I either don't give my best effort in these other areas, or I get overwhelmed, I get an injury, I start to sleep poorly, my appetite gets really dysregulated, I have emotional dips, I start to get depressed, or more anxious really is my trigger. Mm-hmm. So I have learned like what my triggers are, and I also know, well, how do I calibrate intensity for me? Like a lot of people have no idea. They just know what they did in the past that was super intense, and like, I can't do that anymore, so what else can I do? I got to do something much less intense. Mm-hmm. And it's not just about you're doing intensity or you're not. It's how do I channel that towards something that I can do intensely and recover from. And this will be the final thing I'll say before I invite you to give your thoughts here too, which is not all forms of physical intensity will deplete your resources as much as others. So if you go and do, let's just say like, if you go do a weight training workout where you're just doing 5 exercises across your training session, and in those 5 exercises you do 2 sets, or you go very intense all the way to failure, you push yourself to the limit, okay, to get a stimulus, and that 5 exercise workout takes you 45 minutes, that's doing something intensely, and that's going to have a certain amount of recovery and recuperation that's required from that. That's going to apply a certain amount of stress to your entire system and to all your buckets, versus a 45-minute workout session where you are doing relentless intervals of burpees and box jumps and kettlebell swings, and you're out of breath, and then you're moving from circuit to circuit, and you have somebody yelling at you to go faster, and you're trying to keep up with the people around you, and you maybe, because you're so fatigued and exhausted while you're doing that, you're doing an exercise that is, it's not super complicated, but it's got some technique involved, and your technique is poor, so you don't do very good with your technique for 100 reps. Mm-hmm. And then that's going to have a different stimulus. So like, I was talking to my friend Corey, and he had done like an F45 workout, which is it was one of those endurance days where there's just a lot of intervals, and he was doing a dumbbell snatch with not a very heavy weight, but he's going so fast, and it's not a very heavy weight, so he can get away with poor technique. And he was doing the snatches with his elbow bent, and he was like, man, my forearm is really hurting. So he's hurting, his forearm was hurting. Now, those are like equivalent times, like 45 minutes of training, different types of training, very intense for both of them. But one might set him up for a situation where he starts to get an injury, and maybe he can't recover as much from that, or maybe it pushes his stress profile a little bit too high where his appetite gets a little dysregulated, and he's like, I want to eat a bunch of food. And so can Corey tolerate intensity? Absolutely. Which type can he tolerate the best right now? And that is figuring out like, well, can he do that 45-minute style for years and years in a sustainable way? And the answer might be no, but there's another way that he can devote that time intensely to his physical training that he can do sustainably for a long time. And that is where we start to decide, well, what's the best type of training for you to be doing? What's the best way for you to execute that training? Defining what intensity looks like in that training, and then that's kind of the first part of thinking about sustainable intensity.
Great. Yeah. I love how you've laid all this out. And what came to mind for me when you were talking is that when we coach people on nutrition, we go a little bit against the common grain, which is that if you want to lose weight, you should eat as little as possible. Mm-hmm. And we say no. You should eat as much as you can while still making progress towards your goal, while still meeting your body's needs. And that's a mentality shift. And I feel like intensity is very similar in that way, where people touch intensity, it's too much, they have an injury, they have to pull back, they just can't do it, they're burned out. And so they're like, oh, intensity is bad, I need like no intensity, little intensity. And it's like, no, you need as much intensity as you can while still making progress towards your goals. And I think that a lot of intensity really has to come from experience. There's no way for us to sit here on a podcast and explain what it feels like. I think that you really have to go and like try different things in the gym for a while to really understand your own body's limit and your own places where you may have untapped ability to tap into intensity that you just didn't know about before because you didn't push that hard or you were scared. And you finally found a position that feels better for you. And so now you can take that close to failure. But I think about intensity in this balance between the stressors that I'm putting onto my body and onto my recovery, and how those two things are going back and forth, not even just within a workout or within a single day, but maybe even across a week, And like, I know that like the way that I'm approaching my training right now, there's one day of my training per week, which is my leg day, that I know is I'm going to kind of be a zombie after, because I know I'm going to send it on a couple like things that really tap me out. And over time, you get experience with understanding how the rest of that day might look, then how the rest of that week might look. And that doesn't mean that's the only day I work hard. It's just that like there are different things happening that you learn about when you go and apply as much intensity as you can while trying to recover as best you can, where you learn strategies and how to manage the interplay of those two things in a more fluid way than just, I'm either on or off.
Right. Yeah, I love that you brought up like how like our philosophy around nutrition. It's like we're not here to make somebody eat the least amount possible and push intensity as hard as they possibly can on caloric restriction. It's eat the most that you possibly can while still making progress towards your goals. And on the flip side with training, I'd like to think about it similarly, where it's like, let's not figure out what the most workouts you can do in a week is. Let's figure out what the least amount of workouts that you can do in a week looks like. And then once we apply enough intensity in those workouts, can we establish that you're making progress towards your goal with the minimum effective dose? So it's like maximum effective nutritional dose, minimum effective training dose. And I like that is always the place to really start with people, is like, let's strip it down to what's really required and then do each one of those things very intensely. So on the nutrition side, we establish what your nutritional requirements are, apply a lot of consistency and compliance to that, which is a different type of intensity. It's like you have to focus, you got to be disciplined, you have to be accountable, you have to do the work.
Yeah.
But do it really, really well. And this is where like I tell people, it's like, this is where going all in on the specifics of the plan and being really measurable about every part of it is in your best interest. Because if you can convince yourself through being really measured in this process that you can accomplish your goals at this level, it is going to open up a world of hope and possibility to you, where you're like, oh, I don't have to starve myself to see progress. If I just do this more moderate approach, but I do it very consistently, then I can win.
Yeah.
Same thing on training. It's like, okay, we're doing 3 days a week, only 3 days a week of weight training. But now I need to make sure that those 3 sessions, you really execute exceptionally well. And let's work hard to figure that out now. so that over the next 3 months, you can see that with just 3 hours in the gym versus 6 hours in the gym, you can accomplish what you were never able to accomplish at 6 times per week, because you could do it very hard, and you could recover from it well enough that you could come back and do it again and again and again. And it wasn't like you started your journey and then after a month you were starting to burn yourself out because you were trying to do 6 workouts a week. Matter of fact, I just got this message from an old client that used to come to my gym, and he was like, he's doing the intense thing in both categories. He's like, yeah, I've been doing carnivore for the last 3 months, which I would consider a high intensity approach to, nutrition, where it's like you're just removing entire categories of food. You're getting very restrictive. You're trying to cut calories pretty aggressively by having no carbohydrates at all. And then on the training side, he's like, yeah, and I'm in the gym 6 days a week, or I think he said 6 to 7. And I was like, wait a minute, like, why are we doing that? Like, we got to have a conversation. That's a recipe for somebody who's 41 years old and who's got a career and a family. I'm like, that's a recipe for disaster. Like, that's not sustainable. Are you going to be doing that a year from now? And he already hinted at that in what he was saying. He's like, I don't know if I can keep this up. I don't know if I can just keep doing the carnivore thing forever. I was like, precisely.
Exactly.
Like, and if you even have that recognition, then it's time to abandon ship and find the new approach, because there is a system that you can do forever. It's not easy in that you can just like intuitively go through life and it can work. Like, you have to pay attention, you have to have awareness, you have to have good habits, but it's certainly something that you can find a flow and a rhythm of that can last you a long time, so that then it becomes sustainable and you're still doing it intensely.
Yeah. And I just want to highlight how the nutrition piece and the training piece are related, because the more that you are focused on nutrition and the more that you are eating the fuel that you need, especially in the forms of your protein and your carbohydrates, then it's not totally separate from the intensity that you're applying in training. It's going to give you what you need to go and then use that fuel to make a great outcome on your body. And also has impacts on how you have remaining energy to get your steps in throughout the day, to move. It impacts how well you can recover and feel better the next day and feel ready to go back to the gym and make that 3 hours a week or whatever you have chosen to do count super, super hard.
Yeah. There's a creator coach in the fitness space that is extremely well known and popular. His name's Jeff Nippard, and he's probably like one of the first really like the earliest adopters of like YouTube fitness content. And he has a really big, massive platform. And, bodybuilding and powerlifting were kind of his, areas of expertise. He wasn't a CrossFit guy at all. And then he's really good at like nutritional coaching and strategies and body recomposition. And probably for like the last, 5 years, 6 years, there's been this kind of like debate that's been going on in the bodybuilding hypertrophy space. It's like, should you be doing something like a more traditional volume-based approach to training, or should you be doing the sort of like it's like a very specific style of bodybuilding, which is it's called like high intensity. It's like high intensity bodybuilding, like popularized by an old school, like classic era of bodybuilding coach, where you basically just do one set of whatever exercise you're doing, maybe like 3 sets or 4 sets a day, but you just like go to you just absolutely annihilate the muscle group of the day. And like, there's one camp that's like, oh, you should be doing the high intensity thing. And then Nippard has kind of been in this other camp where he's sort of like promoted higher volume, like you're doing 15 to 20 sets in a workout, and do more volume because the evidence shows that the more volume you do, the better it can be for muscle growth. Now, oddly enough, like Jeff Nippard's getting a little bit older. He's, got a very big business, a massive platform. He's doing more content. He's doing more, he's got coaching programs. He's got a nutrition app. He's starting to build out more stuff in his life. So it's like, all right, his stress buckets are getting more full, right? So oddly enough, like this year, like just this past month, Jeff drops his high intensity bodybuilding program, which is kind of like it's a little bit of a divergence from what his other message has been for a while, which is like, let's go back to the minimum and just do it exceptionally hard. And I will give him credit. Like, he's never said that training hard wasn't important. Like, training hard was always the first most important thing. But then he was like, once you're training hard, then more is better. And it is it actually is. Like, if you can train really hard 3 times a day, 6 days a week, and recover from it, then you're going to do better than the person who's training once a day, 3 days a week. Yeah. But the reality is, it's like always in the context of people's lives. And so it's funny to see him getting a bit older, having more responsibilities. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm actually only going to do like 4 exercises, or 2 exercises or 4 exercises per body part a week. I'm not going to do 7 or 8. And I'm only going to do 2 hard sets per exercise. And like, you hear him like in a very authentic way and like this organic style content, like, oh my gosh, like when I know I only have to do 2 sets, I push so much harder. And when I only have this much to do, like, this is like the best gains that I've seen in a long time. And is it because the high intensity thing is better? No, it's just, that's what fits in the context of his current life. And his audience is getting older with him. And it's like, oh, they're not wanting to spend, 2 hours a day in the gym 6 days a week doing push, pull, legs. They want to do upper body, lower body, upper body, lower body 4 days a week and make it more condensed, 45 minutes. And they're getting great results. He's getting great results. And so it just highlights that intensity was always the most important thing. How much intensity you do is what makes it sustainable or not. And how much intensity you can tolerate is completely relative to your phase of life and what you're in and what else you have going on. And so when you come into your 30s and 40s and you're like, what I was doing in the past, like I can't seem to get back to what I was doing in the past, because guess what? Like, whether you knew it or not, like, your metabolism didn't slow down, your body and your genetics didn't change. Like, you're just filling up all your other buckets with things that you care about, things that are important to you, or things that you're obligated to do as a parent or as a professional to make money. And so with this new lifestyle that you have now, we have to redefine what the sustainable amount of intensity looks like for you. And it could be the style of training you're doing, how many days of training you're doing. It could be making a very dedicated window of time focused on improving the other stress buckets, where you improve your nutrition and you improve your environmental stresses so that those go lower so you can tolerate a little bit more physical output. Yep. But it's never been about intensity's bad. Yeah. It's always just been about, well, how much intensity can you handle? And once you recognize that you can't handle as much intensity as you used to, you have to come up with ways to control the amount of intensity that you're doing and place it in the most effective, areas of your fitness possible so that you can keep doing it for another 10, 20, 30 years. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that one piece of intensity is also just the mental readiness factor of, like, when you come into the gym, like, and you're like, okay, like, I know I gotta, like, do this, like, really do it. And I think that having outlets to channel your intensity, this is something I really appreciate about what Dara and Haley were talking about. They're like, it only has to be like, you're only working super, super hard for like seconds. You know? Like, there's only going to be like a very, very, very short window in your workout when this is going to be like really difficult to bear. And then it's going to be over. And it's like, knowing that that's what you have to do like 3 days a week versus like doing that for 45 minutes straight 6 days a week. Yeah. You know, it does make it mentally
more available for you to come in and apply that where it's really going to matter.
Yeah. You should be optimizing for a plan that you can show up to with the excitement and readiness to just get after. And if you stare down the week of what you're supposed to do for your fitness and you're like, oh, I'm not sure I can get up for that, then definitely a red flag that you need to rethink what you're doing and pull back a little bit in some area or channel it in some new, fitness outlet, so that you get that feeling back. Because without that feeling and that mental readiness, then you're not going to push yourself hard enough to get the results that you want. And no amount of doing more is going to help get you there.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. That's it. That's it for today.
Go out there and work hard.
Get it. See you next week.
See ya.